this video I'm going to show you how to create an assembly of your fidget spinner, and we're going to go into the rendering studio and apply colours and materials. First thing you need to do is make sure you have selected your working directory to your Creo folder. Here I have done it to Creo folder and my fidget spinner folder, and I've pressed OK. Then we're going to go new, but this time we're going to choose assembly. We'll call our assembly Fidget ASM. Fidget ASM. And then I'm going to press OK. That's because I've got it previously called ASM1. So once you name that, the environment will open up, but it looks similar to the modeling environment, but it is different. Okay, you still have your model tree on the left hand side, and you still have the three planes. So the first thing you do is, this is the main button. You're going to bring in your parts that you've modeled previously. So here I'm going to click on assemble, and I am going to open up bring in my fidget spinner body. Okay, so that was my M10 fidget spinner. So there is my fidget spinner, and these arrows allow you to move it around the environment. But what I'm going to do, it comes in with the modeling planes with it. So if you left click on the modeling plane, it will create a chain which you can then link to the plane within the modeler in the assembly. That lowers it down to meet that plane. I'm going to come across to the middle plane, or the datum plane here, and then I'm going to come across to this one here, which is the right plane, the same right plane. Now that has gone as a distance, which is good. We are going to make that 0, and that will move across. And then finally we've got the front plane, and we're going to connect to the front plane of the assembly. And again, that is a distance of 58.106, so I'm going to make that to 0, and you'll see it move. It's gone orange, which means it's fully constrained, which means it's locked into the assembly environment on the planes. So I'm going to tick OK, and now I am fully locked in, so that part can't move, and that allows me to bring in all the other components. So the first component I'm going to bring in is the bearing, the 608 bearing, which is going to sit in this location. So I'm going to go up to assembly. I'm going to go to my bearing folder and bring in my 608 bearing. And here, if you choose the inside, or actually it doesn't matter, as long as it's part of the cylinder, the outside of the bearing, the skin, and then where the bearing is going to touch, that skin is going to touch, you click that, and you can see it has rotated that bearing. It is not constrained fully yet, so I'm going to bring that up. Now what we would do here is we can choose the top surface of the bearing and the top surface of the bearing body, and that will that will match those. That's given me a distance. If I now set that at 0, it should move down into the location, because both surfaces are level at 0. I'm going to tick OK. I've just brought in my first part. Now I'm going to bring in the M10 Nut. I'm going to need to do that 3 times. So I'm going to go assemble. I'm going to go to my M10 Nut folder and get the part. So double click on the part, and there it comes in. Here I want you to select the internal cylindrical surface, and then the circle surface underneath. And that brings it across, but it is not located yet, so it's brought it there. So what we're going to do is we are going to choose the top surface and the top surface of the body, and we're going to change that to distance. And the reason why I want to do that is later it will allow you to do an exploded view. For example, you could do an exploded view by changing this number to 78 and it shows it raised out. Change that to 30 and it gets closer. Change that to 1 and it's in, and it's just released by 1 millimeter, which is actually how I would like to see it. Okay, so I'm going to OK that, and then I'm going to go and do that all again. Bring in the part again. The part is over here, so if I roll out and then roll back in, there we go. I'm going to select the inside surface and the inside surface there. I'm then going to choose the top surface of the nut and the top surface of the body, and the offset distance I'm going to make as 1 millimeter, and now that is in location. And I'm going to come back and do the same again. I'm going to tick OK, and I'm going to go and get the nut one more time, M10 Nut, and again we do the same. We are doing the internal cylinder and the internal cylinder here, because they're both circular, they will sit centrally to each other. Again, we have this free flowing, it's not constrained, it's partially constrained, so I'll choose that top surface and this top surface, and that has a distance of 1. Let's see, why is that doing that? What surface did I choose? So I'll choose -1, and it should bring that up. Okay. Right, so that is the components, and then we've got the bearing cap to go onto the bearing. So I'm going to choose assembly. I'm going to go to my bearing, my fidget spinner, and the bearing cap is here. So I'm going to bring that in. So it's coming underneath, which is kind of helpful actually, because I'm going to locate it in underneath. So I'm going to choose the cylinder of the smallest part, so the smallest cylinder surface, and that would touch the internal surface of the bearing. Okay, that's gone into place, but now we can lower that down. I'm going to now choose the underneath surface of the bearing, and that would touch the top surface of this part. Choose that, and that is locked in. I'm going to change that to distance, but leave that as 0, and that will allow me to do an exploded view later. And then I'm going to tick OK, and that part is now attached. Now I've got one more component, it's the same component. I'm going to bring it in again. I'm going to bring in the bearing cap. I'm going to this time rotate it, okay, and just move it up above the model. And I'm going to do the same attachment. So I'm going to choose the outside surface of the smaller cylinder, and I'm going to go in and find the internal part of the bearing. That is locked. You can see it's moved. I now can't move it left or right. They're turned off because I've added a constraint. And now my final constraint is going to be this surface all the way to the underneath surface, which is that one. Click on that. We've done it as it's coming as a distance. Sometimes you have to change them. It's either a coincident or it's a distance. Distance is what I want, because then we can change it later. And I'm going to put 0, and that's going to, if I zoom out and zoom in, you will see when I press 0. Oops, let's go back to that. Fully constrained. That was that distance was, yeah, that has actually touched it. Yeah, that distance, if I'd made that 10, that will raise up. If I change that to 0, you will see it will go back down. Once I tick OK, you now have your components all assembled. Okay, that's worth saving at this point. File, save. That will save into the fidget spinner. Right, now we're going to go across to the renderer. And at this point, the video may slow down because the renderer uses a lot of the processing power for the computer. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the middle. And we'll go across and we'll turn on the render studio. Okay, straight away it goes into a real-time rendering mode. I'm going to turn that off just while I'm setting materials. So first of all, I'm going to come to the appearances, and as you can see, apart from the bearing that I had materials already applied to, everything is still in the standard default grey. So I am going to select the aluminium, metallic aluminium, and then I'm going to select the M10 Nut. I'm going to hold the control key down and select all three nuts at the same time, and then come across and press OK. That has now applied this material to those. I'm now going to go back into appearances. Okay, and I'm going to choose the red plastic. So the red plastic now I'm going to apply to the fidget spinner body, and I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to also apply it to the bearing cap and the bearing cap too, and then I'm going to press OK. So they've now gone red. Okay, I'm going to adjust these materials in a moment. So I'm now going to go in and right click the red material, and here I don't like that red, so I'm going to make it a brighter red. So I'm going to click on the color and I'm going to move that slider right over to the far right. Okay, I'm going to turn up reflectivity and then drop down the glossiness. You'll see the impact of this when we turn on the renderer in a moment. And I'm going to make the reflection color white because most light hitting objects are natural light, so we're going to have bright white. So I'm going to move these sliders over to the right to create the color white and press OK. You can see the blend of reflection starting to appear here. Okay, so I can see the processor is moving quite slowly, so I won't spend too long in here. I'm going to go to scene now, and when you click on scene, my favorite scene here is the default scene. Okay, Creo default scene, but it's selected, but if you edit that scene, I encourage you to change the background to white. So go to drop down in the drop down menu, go to color, and it will put naturally white. You can change that color, but white is good because it allows you to focus on the object and nothing else. It will leave a nice reflection on the surface that it's sitting on. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to put it in perspective view, and then I'm going to put that into a view that I want to see. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to turn on real-time rendering. Okay, so if I center that and then zoom in, so we can see now we've got our materials being applied. I'm going to open up the render, and at this point you have a choice. If you turn off real-time render settings and click render settings, it opens up. What you're seeing here is our basic render settings, which are very impressive. But you can change those, and you have a choice of product, interior, full simulation, or you can do your own custom details. So if I just move to product, you will see a change. You're starting to see some reflection now appearing on the floor. If I go up to, let's go up to full simulation, a lot more light is bouncing onto that surface and then onto the object. Once you're happy with the settings, you can change the size of your image. At the moment it's set to 1920 pixels by 914. So you can reduce the size of that. It's quite a big image actually. And if you move this slider up, it is going to increase the quality of the rendering time. It will spend more time doing that rendering. But really, you should play around with this and just see. It's quite difficult to see the difference when you're dealing with it on a digital screen, but it would make a big difference when they are printed out. Okay, I'm going to now browse where I want to save it. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it Fidget Rendering. Fidget Rendering. And then I'm going to press save. It's going to go into my fidget spinner folder, and then I press render. And now the render studio is doing its work. It's calculating. You won't see this on screen. This is going to save a JPEG file in your working directory. So that now brings me to the end of the rendering video. I'm going to go to that folder now. I'm going to turn off, I'm going to close this, I'm going to turn off real-time render, and I'm going to go to my folder here. I'm going to go to my Creo fidget, or my fidget spinner, and we call that one Fidget Rendering. So I'm just trying to find that now. There it is, Fidget Rendering. And I double click on that, and you will see that that is what is in my folder as a JPEG. Experiment with the settings. Create a range of JPEGs with different views of your fidget spinner. Happy rendering.